that enough or not?
Aye. It's fine with me.
There's not many.
No, I just want.
God's love never fails and it lasts forever.
Can I use this as motivation? Prove Leonard. That's not my personality, really.
No,
If somebody wrong,
just, yeah.
Well, I thought I'll use whatever I've got.
There you go. You don't mind being used that way, right?
I don't want to, I just want to help them.
I know you don't.
Yeah.
Space, I guess.
thinks.
You want me to come shop?
We're not leaving coffee. They have the station.
Yeah.
Oh, you,
Yeah.
before your time, we had another one. You don't know how hard it is to find. We had another one. And one morning I came in, plugged it in.
Accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, but another.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Salty.
I guess
They
this
don't,
stuff's gonna have
they
to
don't
start.
identify.
When I came in, plugged it in, and it was electrocuted. I said, "Oops, let's get a short day." And so I went to look for, I don't know how long that been there. I went to look for a
Can't you just say
percolator. I
John
looked
Joe
everywhere.
Credit
Found the
income
only one
says
I found.
everything.
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, I'm saying
Yeah.
you could, that control.
The accountability. Yes. So you might get a call.
Okay, why not? You'll have to come pick me up.
That's the way
You're
it's
not
going.
glad to walk with you from business to. Well, you may what you will.
Physically steer me away from them. Can't do that.
Oh, is that right?
Wait, no, Dave, a lot of people say in just shopping in general, so that you're not spending more money. You make your list first, and then you never go beyond that. So if your goal is to just buy fruits and veggies and your meats, you hit those two sections and you're out.
I know. I know. She
You know all of that,
I know.
you know.
Like, so I will make a list, because I can't remember what I want.
Oh, yeah, that's.
But then, I will buy these.
Mhm.
But you have to make.
Yeah, I saw that.
know where it is.
I'm gonna let this door close. Okay.
Right, but it's also a grocery store, it's also.
You know, they had
Which I got.
Oh, go to a different grocery store where you don't just have to force yourself to search.
Yeah.
That way, you go to the produce.
Oh,
Produce is always a risk.
Say that.
Or I've heard, someone got tempted by those things because, haven't been forced to for so long. Like, you have to spend your money on something that has nutrition, right? So maybe you could limit the cash that you take.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
We're missing some people, and we have some new people, so that's cool. I'm Brandon. I teach Sunday school.
I'm Sharon, a friend of Joyce.
Okay, I figured you guys were, since you sit around her.
Orders.
Yeah, so they're visiting me from Chicago.
Oh,
from my
cool.
church in Chicago.
Super. That's awesome. I have a visit. My wife's half sister, who lives in Arizona with their shared dad. She's in visiting right now at our house. So, but they're asleep. Well, maybe not now. They were when I got out this morning. All right. So announcements is the Passport camp meeting for the youth. That's going to be today after church in this room. And then there's a church council meeting this afternoon at 2 p.m. in room 105. Hey, Jack.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good.
Coffee now.
And then this is the coffee room, so people just wander in and out of here to get coffee once it's done. This newly created benevolence policy writing team, that's a mouthful. They're meeting June 21st at 6:30 p.m., also down in room 105. There's the Passport Youth Camp is taking place from June 19th through the 24th. And then that's different from the Passport Kids Camp, which is the younger kids. That's the 21st through the 24th, so it's just a little bit shorter. Potluck dinner, special business meeting again this not this Wednesday. On Wednesday, June 29th, which will be just potluck dinner followed by a special business meeting. You're gonna have fried chicken. And the nightlife groups are still on. I've been meaning to respond to your email, by the way, so I'll respond to you. I'll do that today after this. The nightlife groups in August is when they're supposed to start. We're going to have, the idea is to have some small groups get together, and we'll have whoever is willing to offer up their home to meet in, and then again, whoever is willing to actually lead the study group. It's a book study. And someone has chosen a book to get started with, and it's by Jen Hatmaker, Simple and Free. So I guess that's the book for August. But anyway, if you'd like to volunteer either your home to have the meetings or to lead the actual study, please let the church, just let anyone know, really. We're all kind of in on this. So, all right, that's all the announcements. So I'll open with prayer and then we'll get into Sunday school. Dear Lord, we just thank you so much for this beautiful day, and we just thank you for this opportunity to get together and talk about you, learn about you, and think about you. We just pray that you would be with us as we have these discussions and in our worship service, and just accept our worship, Lord. Be with those of us who have struggles and needs that you're aware of, and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so last week we began looking at the scientific evidence for the beginning of the universe, and we started by discussing the standard model of cosmology, which most of us know as the Big Bang theory or the Big Bang model, which is today the prevailing model for the evolution of the universe. And if the standard, and this was, when the Big Bang model came about, this was a huge contrast to this long-held idea that the universe was this static, unchanging thing. But what we learned from the Big Bang model, and it's older than the Big Bang, but essentially what we learned through scientific discovery from Einstein and some others, and what eventually became the Big Bang model, was that the universe is not static and unchanging. It's actually expanding. And if the standard model is correct, then we have really good reasons for believing that the universe began to exist at some finite point in the past. And if you recall the Kalam cosmological argument that we were talking about previously when we were discussing the philosophical arguments for the beginning of the universe, the Kalam cosmological argument essentially says if the universe began to exist, then the universe has a cause of its beginning. And the second premise is the universe began to exist, and so therefore the universe has a cause of its beginning. So if the universe did in fact begin to exist, then certain implications emerge regarding the nature of its cause. And we've discussed this quite a bit. On the basis of the arguments that we've looked at for those two premises, it can be inferred that there is this first uncaused cause that is timeless, spaceless, immaterial, enormously powerful, and personal, that created the universe. And if you don't want to call this being God, then that's fine. The argument is not necessarily an argument for God, but it is an argument for a being that has all of these, or at least many of the properties that are attributed to God. And this is true of both the philosophical arguments as well as it's true for both of the philosophical arguments that we considered for God's existence, the ones that we've looked at thus far. So neither the argument from contingency was the first philosophical argument we discussed, nor the Kalam cosmological argument. Neither of those are necessarily arguments for God, but both of these arguments leave us with a being that possesses certain properties, again, which are typically attributed to God, to what theists call God. And I'm not really sure, what other alternatives there might be for this uncaused being that exists necessarily, which also possesses the properties of immateriality and personality, and that also has the power to bring about the beginning of the universe, or the existence of the universe. But as Christians, we recognize this being as God. So the scientific evidence that we've begun to look at simply offers support for that second premise of the Kalam cosmological argument. It offers support for the idea that the universe did in fact begin to exist. And we saw this last week when we looked at the conclusions of modern science and the Big Bang model, that the universe is actually expanding. And if you were to trace this back as far back as you could possibly go, then you'd eventually arrive at this boundary point from which all space and time in the entire universe emerged. If you were to go beyond that boundary point, you get the negation of all space, time, and material, matter and energy and all of that. So in other words, you get nothing. There is simply nothing to speak of beyond that boundary point, in a material sense anyway. So the only thing that we can conceive of beyond that point are things like, abstract objects like numbers or something to that effect. And this is, or this extraordinary being that we've been discussing that's been kind of revealed through the logic of those philosophical arguments that we looked at. So today, in addition to the expansion of the universe, which we discussed last week, there's another scientific confirmation for the beginning of the universe, and it's found in the second law of thermodynamics. So the second law of thermodynamics essentially tells us that in our expanding universe, entropy, which is it's another name for disorder, is steadily increasing. And so the available amount of energy in the universe to do things that's required for things like life is constantly decreasing. That energy is constantly decreasing. So in other words, in the far distant universe, we're talking billions of years, as far as we can tell, the available energy in the universe for sustaining life and doing all these other things in the universe that make life possible, all of those things will dwindle away and just leave the universe cold and lifeless, dead. And so once the universe reaches this state, no further significant change in the universe is possible. It's a state of perfect equilibrium, which is not conducive to life. Nothing is happening essentially at that point. Scientists call this state of thermodynamic equilibrium. They call it the heat death of the universe, and the universe is just left in this cold, lifeless state from then on. And so it's this eventual death of the universe that actually provides further argument for, or against anyway, an eternally existing universe. Because if the universe had existed forever, then the universe should be dead by now. If the universe actually were infinite in the past, or if the past is truly infinite, then the universe, it would already be dead by now. Why wouldn't it be, if we'd already reached infinity, so to speak? But clearly that's not the case. So the thermodynamic properties of the universe can actually provide this additional piece of scientific evidence that the universe is not past eternal, but it did have a beginning. So the truth of the second premise of the Kalam cosmological argument continues to be supported by the scientific evidence. And then, so therefore, on the basis of the philosophical arguments and then also the scientific evidence, we have good reasons again to believe that the universe did in fact begin to exist at some finite point in the past. It's not eternal, and it's definitely not static. So since whatever begins to exist has a cause for its beginning, the universe has a cause of its beginning. And from there you can begin to think about what properties might be possessed by the thing that caused it, as we have done already. So first and foremost, this cause must be uncaused. It must itself be uncaused. Because there can't be an infinite regress of causes, you have to have this first cause. So this being or whatever that brought the universe into existence, that gave the universe its beginning, it must possess the property of being itself uncaused. Additionally, this first uncaused cause must transcend space and time, since it created space and time, and is therefore beyond space and time. It transcends those things. This first uncaused cause must also be immaterial and non-physical in nature, since anything that is physical and material in nature would exist in the universe. Those matter and that sort of thing came into being as well with the creation of the universe. And then finally, Al-Ghazali, he was the one that developed the Kalam cosmological argument, if you remember. He argued that this first uncaused cause of the universe must also be personal. It must be a personal being. And the reason that this first uncaused cause must be a personal being is because only a being, only a personal being can explain how an eternal cause can produce a finite effect. So that's an effect like the beginning of the universe. If the cause, and the reason this works out is because if a cause is sufficient to cause its effect, then once there is the cause, there is the effect. That's just how it works. For example, the cause of water is, freezing is that it reaches it's at a temperature being below 0 degrees Celsius, right? So if the temperature were below 0 degrees from eternity, then any water that was around would be frozen. It would be ice. It wouldn't be water. I mean, it's still water, but it would be frozen from all eternity. It would be impossible for the water to just begin to freeze at some random point if its cause were always there, permanently there for it to be frozen. It would always be frozen. So now you apply this same logic to the universe. If the cause of the universe is timeless and permanent, then why isn't the universe, permanent as well? Why did the universe only come into existence, approximately 14 billion years ago, according to, the estimations of modern science? So Al-Ghazali maintained that the answer to this problem is that the first cause must be a personal being that is endowed with freedom of the will. That's the first cause exercised its free will to bring the universe into existence, just kind of spontaneously. That's the nature of free will. It enables you to get an effect with that beginning, but from a permanent and timeless cause. And so that's why we ultimately arrive at this first cause that's not only uncaused and beginningless and transcendent and immaterial and those sort of things, unimaginably powerful, but also personal. Again, you don't have to call this being God, but this is what theists are typically talking about when using that term. So that's it. We're done with the scientific arguments. Having said that, does anybody have any questions or curiosities? Or I may not know the answer, but yes.
So personal in that context just means has a will.
Yeah, it's like it has volition. Yes, so that's what Al-Ghazali's original argument was, is that because if the cause is just there from eternity, and it's just this static kind of unchanging impersonal cause, then its effect would always be there as well. It would just it would just naturally bring about its effect from eternity as well. So if the universe is not eternal, which as we've argued, it doesn't seem to be, and there's good evidence against that, then what brought it into existence at some finite point in the past? And so Al-Ghazali would say that means that it's the cause of the universe must also be personal. And that's, yes, to answer your question, that's what he's getting at. It's something with a will, with a free will, to just decide or whatever, to one day, okay, bring the universe into existence. Is that good?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it doesn't. I guess when you say personal, I guess I'm inclined to, I don't know, something like want more than that, but
yeah, I know what you mean, and I think I would too, naturally. But that is what because there's a lot of things that come along with us when we talk about something being personal. But I think what Al-Ghazali was getting at was only a personal being, and whatever more you want to add to that afterwards, you can, I think, safely. But it has to at least, be a personal being, something with agency, with volition, to have just brought the universe into existence at a finite time ago, rather than the universe just always being there because it was just the natural effect of that cause existing. So I had to be able to something to just kind of make that decision and say, okay, I'm going to create something. That's as simple. He keeps it that simple. So we can too for the sake of this. But I understand what you're getting at. I have that same kind of instinct when it comes to the term thinking of something as being personal. So moving on, we're actually getting into another, scientific, also philosophical argument, and this is called the teleological argument, which is also sometimes called the fine-tuning argument or the argument from design for the existence of God. The argument of design is actually really old. It's one of the oldest arguments for God's existence. So if you go back to the ancient philosophers, especially Plato and Aristotle, they were both very enthralled by the order of the cosmos and the universe and, those sort of things in the universe, especially astronomy, looking up at the heavens and that sort of thing. They noticed how the heavens operated in this orderly fashion with the stars and the planets and their constant revolutions. According to Plato, there were two things that led men to believe in God, and the first was the existence of the soul. We won't get into that, but the second argument was from the order of the motion of the stars and of all the things under, all the things that were ordered in the universe. And Plato believed that the order of the universe demands this being, which he called the best soul, who brought about the rational cosmos and the order that it operates under, as that we observe today. And Aristotle too concluded that the order of the cosmos must be the result of the craftsmanship of this divine intelligence. So Aristotle has this work called On Philosophy, and it's a lost work. We actually have it. It's come down to us from Plato. But in this lost work of Aristotle, he imagines the impact of the sight of the world, or he imagines, the impact that the sight of the world would have upon a race of humans who had lived underground for their entire existence. They're like this subterranean, species of humans who had never come above ground. And then, he imagines what it would be like for them to behold the night sky. So he imagines that they one day emerge from this subterranean existence, or prison, I think he might have called it, like they were trapped there, and what the effect of the sight of the world would have on them. And so I'm going to quote what he writes from On Philosophy. Aristotle writes, or says, "When thus they would suddenly gain sight of the earth, seas, and the sky, when they should come to know the grandeur of the clouds and the might of the winds, when they should behold the sun and should learn its grandeur and beauty as well as its power to cause the day by shedding light over the sky, and again when the night had darkened the lands, and they should behold the whole of the sky spangled and adorned with stars, and when they should see the changing lights of the moon as it waxes and wanes, and the risings and settings of all these celestial bodies, their courses fixed and changeless throughout all eternity. When they should behold all these things, most certainly they would have judged both that there exist gods and that all these marvelous works are the handiwork of the gods." Yeah. So whether or not you think Aristotle's conclusion there is right, he did attribute that was just kind of his way of trying to illustrate the reasons, the reasons that we might have for looking up and for looking at the order of the cosmos in general, not just astronomy, but that was kind of a big deal for them. And say, well, this implies a craftsman, a creator, someone who brought order. Back during that time, there was this understanding that before the ordered cosmos, that we see today, there was this primordial cosmos where it was all just chaos and nothing. And so that was kind of their understanding of what was before the ordered cosmos that we see today. And then so they're saying that Aristotle and Plato would both say that, some being had to come along and give it the order that we see today, that they were seeing then and that we recognize today. And then in another book titled Metaphysics, Aristotle also argued that there must be a first uncaused cause, which is God. He describes this God as a living, intelligent, immaterial, eternal, and also a most good being who is the source of order in the cosmos. So then, fast forward quite a while later, scientists used to think that, given the conditions, whatever the conditions of the early universe might have been like, if you gave it enough time, then intelligent life, and then intelligent life was bound to just kind of pop up somewhere, given enough time in the universe as we know it. They just said that given enough time, these intelligent life forms would probably evolve somewhere in the universe. However, in the last 40 to 50 years or something like that, discoveries have proven that assumption quite wrong. In fact, quite the opposite is true. Astronomers and others now recognize that, given how complex and delicately balanced the initial conditions at the Big Bang must have been for the universe, to permit the existence of intelligent life anywhere at all in the universe. And so this is what's been this is actually what has been what has become known as the fine-tuning of the universe for life. And it's important to point out this isn't an argument for the existence of God or anything like that. The fine-tuning really just is this neutral, expression which doesn't say anything about how the fine-tuning is best, explained, only that it is there, that this universe is incredibly fine-tuned to support the existence of intelligent life. And as more discoveries come about, that just seems to get this fine-tuning just kind of seems to get validated. But again, even those first folks who started to recognize this, it wasn't they weren't trying to look for arguments for the evidence of a creator or anything. They were just recognizing how complex and fine-tuned the universe is for sustaining intelligent life. And just a quick note, if you were ever actually interested in reading up on this, I can't remember where the book was recommended from. I mean, I'm sure I read it or something, but I bought the book. But there's a popular level book that was written by a couple of astrophysicists from the University of Sydney. And it's titled A Fortunate Universe, Life in a Finely Tuned Cosmos. And it's a really cool book because these astrophysicists do a really good job of, I don't want to say dumbing down, but they do a really good job of taking all the physics of the universe, well, not all of them, but they do a really good job of explaining the physics of the universe and its fine-tuning while also dealing with some of the difficult scientific questions that still are yet to be answered, but then also some of the philosophical questions that emerge, like why is the universe so fine-tuned and that sort of thing. And they do it in a really good way that a layman like myself can understand and digest. So anyway, I just wanted to plug that book here. But so anyway, over the past 50 years or so, scientists have uncovered this evidence that if the universe had been forged with even slightly different properties, life as we know it would be impossible. And so that's what's meant by fine-tuning. And I'm actually I know it's early, but I'm going to stop there today because I want to talk about the fine-tuning. I'm not going to go too crazy into the science because I don't like talking about stuff that I don't really understand myself, but we'll pick back up with this argument next week and kind of look at some of the the math and things that scientists have observed for what is required in the universe for permitting our existence, the existence of intelligent life and that sort of thing. It's pretty neat. I actually like the whole which is why I bought the book. But anyway, I'm going to stop there. And do you guys have any questions or anything to talk about? Because I really cut it short, but I try not to jump into the middle of things and then have to quit and wait until the next week. So I wanted to find a good stopping point for that one. Okay. Well, that concludes our Sunday school lesson for today. Thank you for being here.